6.3 Wang Ji and Zhang Jilong, The Inheritance of Folk Maritime Merchants, The Strengthening of Commercial and Maritime Ethos. 3. 汪直与郑芝龙，民间海上的传承，商业与海洋气质的强化。After the tightening of maritime prohibitions in the Mid-Ming dynasty, official maritime exchanges declined, and the maritime heritage and commercial thinking of the Mongol piece shifted to the folk. Wang Ji and Zheng Jilong became the core representatives, promoting the further strengthening of the Chinese commercial and maritime ethos and becoming the folk continuation of the economic and cultural changes in the Yuan dynasty. Their maritime trade activities, on the one hand, inherited the commercial and maritime thinking of the Yuan dynasty, and on the other hand, were constantly suppressed by the Ming dynasty's autocratic imperial power, reflecting the conflict between the commercial vitality of Chinese civilization and the autocratic political system. Wang Ji, a folk maritime merchant in the Jiajing reign, his fleet's deep draft sea ships, astronomical navigation technology and Southeast Asian trade routes were all directly inherited from the Simu maritime merchants of the Yuan dynasty. He broke the maritime prohibition and carried out cross-regional maritime trade with Japan, Southeast Asia, and Portugal, bringing European firearms and technology back to the Central Plains, becoming a folk intermediary for the Sino-Western scientific and technological collision in the Ming dynasty. HIS actions were exactly the folk practice of Yuan maritime thinking, but his ultimate death at the hands of the Ming court also reflected the Ming dynasty's suppression of folk, commercial vitality under the autocratic imperial power. Zheng Xilong, a late Ming maritime merchant, his maritime empire integrated Central Plains navigation technology, Arab trade networks, and European firearms, with trade scope covering the Chinese coast, Southeast Asia, Japan, and the Indian Ocean. His business model combined the traditional folk trade of the Central Plains, the Arab caravanserai system, and the European joint stock system, becoming the world's largest folk maritime trade force at that time. Zheng Jilong's success was the result of hundreds of years of cross-civilization integration since the Mongol peace, ND, the ultimate embodiment of the new Chinese ethos of valuing commerce and profits, being open and enterprising, and embracing the ocean. HIS later surrender to the Qing dynasty also reflected the survival dilemma of folk maritime merchants under the background of feudal autocracy. 7. The institutionalization of master-servant politics, the Mongol grassland political tradition, and the transformation of Central Plains political ethics. 7. 主奴政治的制度化，蒙古草原政治传统与中原政治伦理的善变。While the Mongol peace promoted the cultural fusion of the Eurasian continent, the master-servant political tradition rooted in the Mongol grassland culture also began to reshape the political ethics of the Central Plains. This tradition, with Mukhali as the representative, took the master-servant relationship as the core of political ethics, expanded the private master-servant contract to the national political system, and broke the traditional political pattern of the monarch and his subjects are equal in ritual, formed since the pre-Qin period in the Central Plains. The institutionalization of this master-servant politics in the Yuan dynasty became the turning point of Chinese traditional politics from relative monarchy to absolute monarchy, and its core gene was fully inherited by the Ming and Qing dynasties. 7.1 Mukhali的 servant glory, the politicalization of the grassland master-servant ethic, 一幕华丽的奴仆荣耀，草原主奴伦理的政治化。The qualitative change of the monarch-minister relationship in the Yuan dynasty began with the active recognition and extreme demonstration of the servant identity by Mukhali, the founding meritorious official of the Mongol Empire. As the leader of the four great heroes under Genghis Khan, Mukhali was conferred the title of Grand Tutor and King, holding the military and political power of conquering the Central Plains, but he always regarded himself as the loyal old servant of the Golden Family and regarded this identity as the supreme glory far exceeding the royal title. The history of the Yuan dynasty biography of Mukhali records his last words to his descendants on his deathbed. I have assisted in accomplishing the great cause of the country, wearing armor and holding sharp weapons for nearly 40 years, conquering the east and west, and have no more regrets except that Biangjing has not been captured. You must strive hard, never forget the master's kindness, and live up to my ambition. The master's kindness here is not the monarch-minister meeting grace in the Central Plains dynasties, but the favor of the master to the servant in the nomadic civilization. Mukhali's lifelong pursuit was to repay the master's nurturing grace through military exploits and maintain the contractual loyalty between the master and the servant. This recognition was not an individual case of Macaulay, but a common political ethic of the Mongol nobles. Genghis Khan once said frankly to Macaulay, "The peace of the country is mostly due to your efforts. The relationship between me and you is like the shaft to a cart and the arm to a body." On the surface, it seems that the monarch and his minister know each other well, but in fact, it hides the master-servant division. The shaft and arm are all appendages of the cart and body without independent will and personality. Muqal. I not only had no resistance to this, but also took it as the core of political legitimacy. When he governed the Central Plains, He always issued orders in the name of the loyal servant of Genghis Khan. The documents he sent to the Southern Song court preserved in the secret history of the Mongols all began with, "I, Macaulay, the loyal servant of Genghis Khan, am ordered by my master to govern the South," taking the master servant identity as the highest political symbol. The politicalization of this grassland master-servant ethic completely subverted the monarch-minister ethic of the Central Plains. Before the Yuan dynasty, the minister did not need to kneel when meeting the emperor. Even in the Tang and Song dynasties with a strong imperial power, the monarch and his ministers still sat and discussed politics together, and the minister could argue with reason when discussing state affairs. As recorded in the history of the Song dynasty ritual records, the emperor meets the prime minister and both sit and talk with equal ritual. However, the Yuan dynasty took the master-servant relationship as the fundamental principle of the monarch-minister relationship, and the minister became the personal servant of the emperor, losing the independent political personality and ritual equality since the pre-Qin period. As Sugiyama Masaaki pointed out in Kublai's challenge, the monarch-minister relationship in the Yuan dynasty is essentially an expanded grassland master-servant relationship. The emperor is the Suzerain of all subjects, and the minister is the house slave of the emperor. THIS relationship runs through all levels of politics, law, and etiquette, forming the core framework of Yuan politics. 7.2. The Keshik system, the core carrier of master-servant politics and the prototype of the Ming factory guard system. 2. 妾薛制度，主奴政治的核心载体与明代厂卫制度的原型。The Keshik system of the Yuan dynasty, as the emperor's personal bodyguard and core power institution, was not only the institutional carrier of master-servant politics, but also became the direct spiritual prototype of the Secret Service rule of the East Factory and West Factory in the Ming dynasty, providing a power operation template for the absolute monarchy of the Ming and Qing dynasties. The Keshik system originated from the night guard system of the Mongol grassland. Genghis Khan expanded it into an elite force of 10,000 people, whose members were mostly children of Mongol nobles, followed the emperor for life, and assumed multiple responsibilities such as guard, attendant, and deliberation. However, its essence is not a mere military or administrative institution, but the emperor's personal servant group. The relationship between the Keshik members and the emperor is a pure master-servant relationship. They do not need to follow the regular administrative procedures, are directly subject to the emperor's orders, and can exercise power bypassing the central secretariat, the Privy Council, and other central institutions. The history of the Yuan dynasty military records. The Keshik are the emperor's imperial troops, all of whom are the children of meritorious officials and relatives, with hereditary titles and no fixed number. They are involved in all matters such as imperial guard, accompanying the emperor, and even managing court meetings and sacrificial rituals. The power of the Keshik originated from the emperor's personal trust, not institutional endowment. They could impeach ministers at will, interfere in government affairs, and even participate in the decision-making of the imperial succession. This non-institutional core power is a typical feature of master-servant politics, the emperor. Realize the absolute control of the country through the personal servant group, bypassing the formal administrative system. This power operation model broke the traditional bureaucratic political system of the Central Plains, which took the 3 provinces and 6 ministries as the core. ND formed a political pattern of the imperial power is above all else.